Hey guys, this is Kelly and welcome back to the garden. Today I am in the archway where I just planted out my pumpkins last week, although you may notice that it looks a little bit different. It's actually covered with some shade cloth that we just put on a couple of days ago, and the main reason why we did that was because we had planted our pumpkins out in this archway and I didn't exactly follow the correct protocol, I guess, to harden off my seedlings. So they were suffering a little bit, so I had to offer them a bit of extra protection just for a couple of days. So today I thought I would do a quick video because it's that time of year where everybody's planting out their seedlings, whether you've just moved into spring in my part of the world or over the other side of the world, whether you're moving into autumn. Everyone's getting seedlings out. So it's a really important thing to do to harden off your seedlings, something I didn't quite follow with these pumpkin seedlings, and I had to kind of fix the situation before the plants got too stressed out. So if you haven't heard of the term hardening off your seedlings, it might sound a little bit confusing, but honestly it's not. It's just a bit of a fancy way of saying toughening up your plants before they move out into the garden, into their forever homes. Now, the reasons why this is really important to do is because depending on where you started your seeds for the season, whether you started them in a greenhouse or a shade house or even indoors in your home, they've been in that protected environment. They haven't had the wind on them. They haven't had the direct harsh sunlight. So they have been in a really protected area. So it's really important that when you are planting them out in the garden, you need to slowly acclimate them to the climate outside. So that way, when you do plant them out, they're not going to have severe transplant shock. It's going to ease that up a little bit for them. So with these pumpkins, I was in a little bit of a rush. I did have them outside, just hardening them off for a couple of days, but really this process should probably take at least over a minimum of 4 days to a week, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And I had my plants, my pumpkin seedlings, out for only maybe 2 or 3 days. So they weren't totally hardened off. They weren't totally acclimated to my outside climate yet. And I kind of paid the price for that. Now, I didn't lose any seedlings. I did come out and check on them each day, and I had noticed that they were starting to droop and the sun was quite hot. We weren't actually supposed to get the temperatures that we got. We were supposed to have a few cool days in a row, and so that's why I chose then to plant out the pumpkin seedlings. But as usual, you can't trust the weatherman. They were wrong, and we actually had a couple of quite warm days for this time of year, and we had to come out and pop this shade cloth up over the top. So that's just a temporary solution. We'll probably take this down in a few days. But the pumpkin plants are looking really nice. They kind of bounced back a little bit. They were starting to wilt and look a bit stressed out from the sun. But once we got the shade cloth up, they really bounced back. Hardening off your seedlings. So how can you do it in your garden to minimize transplant shock for your seedlings? Well, usually you should have a minimum of 4 days, but ideally it's at least a week, maybe even a bit longer than that. And what you want to do is just bring out your seedlings just a couple of hours a day. Make sure you pop them in a nice shady spot, just so they're not in direct sunlight. Make sure you keep them out of the wind because they're not as strong to tolerate high winds. Don't forget they have been in that sheltered spot where they're not used to being blown about by the wind. So make sure you keep them out of the wind in a nice shady spot. After a couple of days, you can extend that time and stretch it out to a few hours, and eventually you're going to want to leave them outside all day. Now, at first, I do like to keep them in the shade for at least a few days. Now, maybe after the 4th day, I like to move the tray into the area where I will be planting them out in the garden, although I'll still leave them in their pots or their soil blocks or seed snails, whatever they may be in. It's really important. Don't transplant them out just yet, but I do have them in the area where they're going to be planted out. and slowly I will move them into the sun. But if I notice that they are starting to wilt, I will move them back into the shade. Basically, it's just really important to observe your plants, observe your garden, and just see what the weather's doing. And if you notice your plants are starting to be a bit stressed, then just move them back into the shade. Sometimes the process can take a little bit longer depending on the weather, depending on your climate. But for me, it probably takes about a week. And I know that you just want to get those plants into the garden, and it can be really frustrating, but this is a really important step. I've got some seedlings hardening off at the moment, and they are some tomato plants. Now, I already have planted out some of my tomatoes, but I'm growing about 6 different varieties this year, and I still have a few that I haven't planted out into the garden yet. One of the varieties that I haven't planted out yet is called Gross Lizzie, and I've got 2 trays here of tomato plants, and they are looking absolutely beautiful. Right now they've been outside for about 4 days. The spot that they are in does get a little bit of full sun, probably just after lunchtime, but I have been keeping an eye on them and they seem to be doing really well. So I'll probably keep them in this area for another day, and then I'm going to move them into the spot of the garden where they're going to be planted out. And where I'm planting them does have shade cloth over the top of the beds, so hopefully that will help a little bit with the transplant shock, and if we have any hot days, that will give them some protection. But right now they are about halfway through the hardening off process, and they are looking really, really wonderful. There have been quite a few times where I've been really excited to get my plants out into the garden and I didn't harden them off. I thought it's not too hot, they'll survive, but no, they just weren't used to the temperature outside of the house, and they did go into transplant shock, and I did lose quite a few plants. But I've definitely learned my lesson on that, and so now I always make sure I harden off my seedlings. With the pumpkins, that's another case. I was being impatient and I was rushing a little bit. I thought that them being outside for a couple of days, a few days would have been enough, but obviously it wasn't. They weren't quite ready yet. So I'm going to keep that shade cloth on for maybe another couple of days, and then I'll take it off. And when I do take it off, I will keep checking on the plants and just seeing how they're going. If they need to be covered again, then I will do that. Although it was quite a pain to put the shade cloth up over that archway. It was a bit difficult. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you have any questions or comments, please pop them below. Let me know how you like to harden off your seedlings, and if you have done the same things that I did, you're a bit impatient and you wanted to get those plants out into your garden. Thank you so much for watching the video, and as always, if you enjoyed it, please make sure you give it a like, share it around, and subscribe, as it's going to help my channel out a lot. And I really want to try and reach as many people as I can to encourage them to start growing their own food. Radio, well, I hope I can encourage you to get into your gardens today, to plant some seeds, plant some plants, grow some food, and try and be a bit more self-sufficient. But until then, I will see you all next time. Bye.